Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. FPL Consult here, and today we're going to take a look at our Game Week 6 Wildcard team. So Game Week 5 has just passed, and to be honest, Game Week 5 was a really disappointing game week for a lot of us, especially those of us who loaded up on Spurs assets. None of Maddison or Son returned, and a lot of other assets like Jackson, Sterling, the Manchester United assets as well, none of them returned. So a very disappointing Game Week 5, and that's why maybe some of us are thinking of wildcarding in Game Week 6. Now, I'll discuss the advantages and disadvantages of that and whether we should do it given our respective situations, and then we'll take a look at the fixture taker before looking at the Game Week 6 wildcard team. So hopefully you guys do enjoy this video, and if you do, please give it a like and also subscribe as well if you are new around here. So let's jump into the advantages and disadvantages to help you guys kind of consider and decide whether you should wildcard or not. So one of the major advantages is for those of us who loaded up on Spurs assets and maybe tripled up on Spurs, maybe Maddison plus Son plus a Udogi. At this point in time, you're looking at your team and you're thinking, well, you have Arsenal coming up and you have Liverpool as well. Maybe if you wildcard now, you can reduce the overload on Spurs assets that you did for that Sheffield game. So that's one of the main advantages, followed by a possibility that you can reduce your Manchester United or Arsenal assets if you are still doubled up on them. So I'm sure a couple of us have still stuck with Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford. Both of them are blanked in Game Week 5, so maybe you want to reduce that down to 1. Same for Arsenal assets as well. And another major advantage is I think you can get ahead of the curve now. Players like Salah, who everyone will start to bring in come Game Week 8. Come Game Week 8, Game Week 9, people will start to bring Salah in. He's the most nailed Liverpool attacker and their fixtures have a swing. So if you wildcard now, you can get ahead of that. And Salah has been really consistent. So that is a decent strategy to go for if you are wildcarding now. And of course, lastly, you can swap out some of your fringe players, some of your bench players, you can upgrade them. Potentially your 4.5 million forward can be upgraded to Morris as well, as I put in parentheses there. You can get ready for Game Week 7, the double Game Week 7 for Morris, of course, by bringing Morris in and putting him on your bench as well. Right, so those are the major advantages, but as for the disadvantages, I think these are disadvantages we need to consider quite strongly as well, because these can kind of put us off wildcarding in Game Week 6. So a big fixture swing is incoming for a lot of us. We already know that from Game Week 8 to Game Week 10, there are a couple of teams that are having fixture swings, and which is why most of us are looking to wildcard in that period. So if you are wildcarding now in Game Week 6, you will have to take that into account, that there will be a fixture swing incoming from Game Week 8 to Game Week 10 period. And that also means, right, that we will have to take a long-term view with your team as you are wildcarding. And this brings us to our next disadvantage, that most teams with good long-term fixtures do not have good fixtures from Game Week 6 to Game Week 7. So basically what you'll have to do is to kind of make a little bit of a sacrifice, go for players that are better in the long run, and you may not reap the benefits of this wildcard immediately in Game Week 6 and Game Week 7, because teams that you will have in your wildcard team now will be players that you can keep for the long run, and basically they don't have good fixtures now in Game Week 6 and 7. So a little bit of a compromise here, but as I mentioned, you can still get ahead of the curve with a couple of players. And then, of course, not to mention, there will be another international break coming in between Game Week 8 and Game Week 9. That will be the second international break of this season, and of course, it will bring things like injuries, etc. So considering all these advantages and disadvantages, then you can decide whether you should wildcard or not. I think it's mainly team dependent, and unless you really need to do it, I would try to put it off until about Game Week 9 or Game Week 10 after the international break. But there we go, and let's now take a look at the fixture ticker. So this is the fixture taker by Fantasy Football Hub of the teams with the best fixtures over the next 6 game weeks. Now, of course, Luton and Burnley have a double game week in Game Week 7, and that's kind of the reason why they are shot all the way to the top of the fixture taker. But of course, we're not going to target Luton and Burnley that heavily. Probably just Morris or a Luton defender potentially, because their double game week fixtures is a little bit better with Everton and Burnley in their double game week fixtures. Right, but aside from that, I don't think we're going to consider Luton or Burnley assets too heavily. So I want to focus on the teams after that, namely Aston Villa, Liverpool, Newcastle and Brentford. These are the teams going forward with some of the best fixtures. Now, of course, for Aston Villa, they have Chelsea in Game Week 6 and Brighton in Game Week 7. So for your Game Week 6 wildcard, if you are wildcarding, you may potentially delay the time that you bring in your Aston Villa assets, but at least do have it at the back of your mind that after Game Week 8, it will be Wolves, West Ham at home, Luton at home, and Nottingham Forest away. Now that's great fixtures, and beyond that as well, they do have one of the best fixtures all the way until the midway point of the season. So Aston Villa, definitely a team to have at the back of your mind. Get ready to bring these assets in if you don't already start with them on your Game Week 6 wildcard. Now for Liverpool, as I mentioned, from Game Week 8 onwards, you see Everton, Nottingham Forest, and Luton, and beyond that as well, their fixtures are really good. So now in Game Week 6, they have West Ham. You probably will start to go with Salah in your Game Week 6 wildcard to get ahead of the curve. And not only that, if you don't start with Salah, then you will have to make a couple of transfers to get him in later on. So it's just not worth the hassle. So if you're wildcarding in Game Week 6, I'll probably just start with Salah already. Now, for Newcastle, as you guys can see, it's a sea of green fixtures. Sheffield, Burnley, Crystal Palace, and Wolves in their next 5 fixtures. So really good. But the thing with Newcastle is that they will be playing Champions League very soon. And that obviously will bring some rotation. For now, it seems like the attack is where the rotation would come in. Players like Callum Wilson, Isak, some wingers as well, Almiron, Gordon, Harvey Barnes. These are players that will be rotated. But I think for the defense, players like Kieran Trippier, Shah, and Botman, they seem pretty nailed to me, right? But of course, no one knows. Once Champions League kicks in, maybe we see some rotation there as well. So even though there are a sea of green fixtures here, do keep it at the back of your mind that rotation may come in for Newcastle. Now, lastly, for Brentford, as I mentioned, I think Brentford is definitely a team we still need to target, simply because Everton, Nottingham Forest, and Burnley in Game Week 9. Now, these are fixtures that you want Mbeumo for as well. Maybe after that, you can look to offload him, but at least from Game Week 6 onwards, he still is the best 6.5 million value midfielder for me. Right, so I'll definitely have him in the draft, and so on and so forth for the other teams, but I just want to focus on Aston Villa, Liverpool, Newcastle, and Brentford. Now, let's take a look at the Game Week 6 wildcard team. So this is the Game Week 6 wildcard draft, and the team value is 99 million, so a lot of you guys will have extra money in the bank. Now, I do have plans for this particular wildcard draft moving forward, especially in Game Week 8, where there are some transfers planned. I'll discuss them towards the end of this video, right? But for now, this formation is a 3-4-3 formation, and obviously, this is a formation that has not been adopted a lot this season, so I will be switching to a 3-5-2 formation. As I mentioned just now, the money in the bank will be used to switch it to a 3-5-2 formation moving forward, which I'll discuss later. So let's focus on the team right now. As I mentioned, a 3-4-3 formation. In goal, we have Flecken and Areola. Now, I know Leno has kept a clean sheet in Game Week 5, but they're not going to play Luton Town every game week. I still feel like Fulham's defense is not 100% watertight, and I do feel like moving forward, Brentford's fixtures, as I mentioned in the previous section during the fixture ticker, they're pretty good, and he rotates quite decently with Areola as well, right? So that's the keeper pairing I'm going to go for, and of course, Flecken has Everton at home in Game Week 6. There's every chance he can keep a clean sheet against Everton, right? So that's the choice of keeper pairing. For the 3 defenders in this starting 11, I've gone for Botman, Shah, and Estupiñán. So I'll talk about the 2 Newcastle defenders here. I haven't gone for Trippier because obviously, if you take a look at the forwards, it's quite heavy in the midfield and in the forward line as well. So to make some sacrifices in terms of budget, I've chosen not to go for Kieran Trippier, but instead go for the double up of Botman and Share instead. I still think like moving forward, Kieran Trippier may be rotated, so this could potentially save you a little bit of a headache when if Kieran Trippier gets rotated. But Botman and Shah, I do feel like they will continue to start every game, whether it's the Champions League or the Premier League. So I've gone with both of them here, obviously for Newcastle coverage. As we mentioned just now, Newcastle's fixtures are really good moving forward for the next couple of game weeks. Now for Estupiñán, he plays Bournemouth at home in Game Week 6. Now, of course, in Game Week 7 and Game Week 8, tougher fixtures. But after that, it looks really, really good for Estupiñán, right? So I still want to have him. And of course, Brighton are a team right now that just look like they can play any opposition and do well against them. And in the off chance that Brighton keep a clean sheet, Estupiñán will always be pretty high up the bonus points as well. Now, it's important to mention that in Game Week 5, he missed out because he was back from the international break pretty late. But come Game Week 6, of course, it's back to Premier League action. So we do think that Estupiñán will be straight back into the starting 11. So that's the 3 defenders I've gone for in this starting 11. The 2 other defenders on the bench is Medicash and Kabori. Medicash, as I mentioned, moving forward from Game Week 8 at least onwards, we will want Aston Villa assets because their fixtures swing really good there. So Medicash is in preparation for that, and there will be plans to bring more Aston Villa players in, which I'll discuss later on. For Kabore, of course, he's just for defensive coverage, a 4.0 million bench fodder from Luton Town, and this is the one that I was talking about where you may potentially want an extra Luton Town player in a defender on your bench as well, right? And then for Nakamba, I've gone for him as a 4.5 million midfielder. There's no chance that I'm going to play him in game week 7, even though they have the double. He'll just be a bench fodder because for the time being, this is a 3-4-3 formation, and then we will be moving to a 3-5-2, and Nakamba will be sold for someone, right? So let's focus on the 4 midfielders in this starting 11, and it's Mbeumo, Salah, Maddison, and Marcus Rashford. So I'll talk about Mbeumo first. Mbeumo, as I mentioned, I definitely want him in the team. He's on penalties, nailed. Brighton's fixtures over the next 4 game weeks is so good, right? So Mbeumo, I do think will continue to tick along. Potentially after game week 9, we can consider selling Mbeumo, right? But in terms of being just 6.5 million and enabling the team to look as such, he just provides great value. So I'm definitely going to have him. Right beside him is Mohamed Salah. Really expensive at 12.5 million, but for what he brings to the team, at 12.5 million, he's nailed, potentially still on penalties, and Liverpool's fixtures are really good. And keep in mind that he hasn't blanked since game week 1 as well. So he has been ticking along very, very nicely. And of course, the price tag is what puts us off. But if you're going to wildcard in game week 6, I definitely will start to have him in our drafts already. Now, as for Maddison, yes, he plays Arsenal away now in game week 6, but at least we do need to have one Spurs player. Now, yes, they didn't play that well against Sheffield United, but at least in game week 8 onwards, we will want to have some Tottenham coverage. So this is where Maddison comes in, where even now he plays Arsenal away in game week 6 now, and game week 7 he plays Liverpool. After that, it looks really good. So you can potentially consider, if you want to, right, maybe Rashford to Son in game week 8 when they play Luton Town, and that will already give you a double up there. So of course you can continue to assess whether that will be the case, but for now I will have Maddison here in the draft. And for Marcus Rashford, he plays Burnley away, and the thing with Marcus Rashford is when you're comparing Rashford and Bruno Fernandes, he just looks as if he has so much better goal threat. He looks more lively. Bruno Fernandes has been pretty disappointing of late as well. Even though he's on penalties, nailed, 90 minutes, etc. I think we get so much more out of Marcus Rashford. So he's the Manchester United asset I've chosen to go with here. And up front, it's the front three of Erling Haaland, Alvarez, and Carlton Morris. So for the 2 Manchester City forwards, I think nothing much to be said there, because honestly, Haaland and Alvarez have been doing so good up top for Manchester City, and Alvarez has actually been such a great differential. For those of you guys who went with him in game week 3 instead of going for Jackson, you guys really profited. And this is where I think if you're wildcarding in game week 6, he has Nottingham Forest here in game week 6, and then he will play Wolves in game week 7 as well. So really think that Alvarez is a player I'll definitely have in my game week 6 wildcard. Slight risk of rotation here and there, but of course Pep has just said in the post-match interview after the game where, you know, he said Alvarez is kind of undroppable at this point in time, but honestly, we know there's no such thing in Pep's book, right? So for the time being, it looks as if Alvarez will at least continue to start. And against Nottingham Forest, against Wolves, you fully expect Man City to run riot there. So that's why Alvarez is in the team together with Haaland. Carlton Morris, now he plays Wolves at home. Obviously, this is a pick with only double game week 7 in mind, because come game week 7, he will play Everton and Burnley. So that's where we'll want him. And this is where I'll start to discuss a little bit about the transfer plans moving forward. So come game week 8, after the double for Luton, the plan for this team is to sell Carlton Morris to Archer. So this downgrades Morris to Archer and frees up an extra 1 million. So you add that to the extra cash you already have in your bank, because the team value currently is only 99 million. So you'll have extra money in the bank. You add this extra 1 million and you can upgrade Nakamba to Diaby in game week 8, and this is when the fixtures swing for Aston Villa, and that's where Medicash and Diaby will come into your starting 11, and Archer that you just swapped Morris out for will be on the bench. So that's the plan to move back to a 3-5-2 after game week 7th, the double for Morris. So that's the plan for this team, and I do think like Game Week 6, going into the Game Week 6 with this team actually looks really tempting and really strong. So let me know what you guys think of this wildcard draft, and are you activating the chip? Let me know down in the comments below, and what changes you would make to this team as well. But for now, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and found it useful, and if you did, please drop a like and also subscribe as well if you are new around here, and I'll catch you guys for more Game Week 6 content coming up really soon. Bye bye.